50,000 years ago, a small group of humans stood on a beach, staring at open ocean stretching farther than any of them could see. No compass, no maps, no idea what, if anything, lay beyond the horizon. And somehow, against odds that should have been impossible, they got in simple boats, pushed off from shore, and became the first humans in history to deliberately cross open sea. This is one of the strangest mysteries in all of human prehistory. And honestly, the more you dig into it, the less sense it makes, and the more remarkable it becomes. Let's set the stage. Around 50,000 years ago, modern humans had already spread across much of Southeast Asia. But ahead of them lay something new: Wallace's Line, an invisible biological boundary named after naturalist Alfred Russel Wallace, marking a deep water channel that even during the lowest sea levels of the Ice Age never fully closed into a land bridge. On one side, Asian animals; on the other, an entirely different ecosystem, marsupials and species found nowhere else, cut off for millions of years by open water that never froze solid enough to walk across. To reach Australia, our ancestors had to cross this gap, and it wasn't a short swim. Depending on the exact route, researchers estimate open water crossings of at least 50 to 70 kilometers, with some stretches offering no visible land at all on the opposite shore. Standing on that beach 50,000 years ago, you wouldn't see Australia in the distance. You'd see empty horizon in every direction and nothing telling you land existed on the other side at all. So why would anyone risk it? Here's where the mystery deepens. Archaeologists have found genuinely convincing evidence that people reached Australia by roughly 65,000 years ago based on dated artifacts at a rock shelter called Majid Bebe in northern Australia. A date so early it initially shocked researchers and sparked years of scientific debate over whether the dating methods were reliable. Multiple independent studies since then have largely confirmed the age, pushing back the timeline of Australian settlement earlier than almost anyone originally expected. Now think about the boats themselves, because this is where things get genuinely staggering. We have 0 surviving watercraft from this period. Wood rots, reed boats decompose. Whatever vessels these people built vanished from the archaeological record entirely. Which means everything we know comes from indirect evidence and educated reconstruction. Researchers studying Ice Age technology believe the most likely vessels were simple rafts or dugout canoes, built from bamboo or lashed logs. Using stone tools we've recovered from sites along the likely departure coastlines. No metal fastenings, no sails as we'd recognize them. Possibly nothing more than paddles and raw determination. And here's a detail that should genuinely terrify you. Modeling the ocean currents and wind patterns of that era, researchers have found that a crossing attempt could easily take 1 to several days. Drifting through open water, at the mercy of currents that could just as easily carry a raft away from land entirely as toward it. No fresh water source except what you carried. No guarantee of rescue if something went wrong. A single miscalculation, a sudden storm, a raft coming apart in rough seas. And there would be no trace left behind at all. No way for us to ever know how many attempts failed silently before one finally succeeded. This wasn't a one-time fluke either. Genetic and archaeological evidence shows that successful crossings happened repeatedly not just to Australia, but across the wider region researchers call Wallacea. A scattered chain of islands between mainland Asia and Australia that required multiple separate sea crossings to traverse, island hopping across dozens of kilometers of open water at each step. Over and over, for generation after generation. So, what does this tell us? Researchers point to something remarkable: intentionality. This almost certainly wasn't an accident, a few unlucky people swept out to sea by a storm and getting lucky. The scale and repetition of successful crossings suggests deliberate seafaring, purposeful voyages undertaken by people who somehow understood, or at least strongly suspected, that land existed beyond what they could see, and organized real expeditions to reach it, likely carrying enough people in each attempt to establish a viable breeding population on the other side. Likely carrying enough people in each attempt to establish a viable breeding population on the other side. Think about the sheer psychological weight of that decision. You're not just risking your own life. You're loading a raft with people you love, children included, based on nothing more than intuition. Maybe secondhand stories from earlier failed attempts, perhaps drifting debris or migratory birds suggesting land existed somewhere beyond the horizon. And you push off anyway into open water with absolutely no guarantee any of you survive the crossing, let alone find anything on the other side worth the risk. This crossing predates any other confirmed deliberate open ocean seafaring anywhere else in the archaeological record by tens of thousands of years. The famous Polynesian voyages across the vast Pacific, which most people assume represent humanity's first great ocean crossings, wouldn't happen for tens of thousands of years after this. Whoever crossed into Wallacea and onward to Australia were, as far as we can tell, the very first humans in the history of our species to deliberately conquer open ocean. Decades before written language, agriculture, or anything we'd recognize as complex civilization existed anywhere on Earth. And here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. We don't know their names, we don't know their language. We don't know what stories they told each other in those final hours before pushing off from shore, what fears they voiced, what they believed waited for them on the other side, or whether they even believed anything was there at all. All that survives is the simple, staggering fact that they made it, that their genes are traceable in modern Aboriginal Australian populations today, representing one of the oldest continuous cultural lineages on the entire planet. Stretching back, unbroken, to that first impossible crossing. Modern replica experiments using tools and techniques believed to match the period have attempted similar crossings using period-appropriate rafts. And the results have been genuinely humbling. Several attempts failed outright, rafts breaking apart or drifting hopelessly off course within hours, underscoring just how difficult, dangerous, and uncertain the original crossings must have been, undertaken with less knowledge, less preparation, and immeasurably higher stakes than any modern recreation could ever fully replicate. So the next time you look out at open ocean, remember this. Somewhere around 65,000 years ago, standing exactly where you might be standing now, a small group of people looked at that same endless horizon. They saw absolutely nothing waiting for them and decided to go anyway. Not because they knew what they'd find, because they were willing to risk everything on the possibility that something might be out there worth finding. And it worked. Against every reasonable expectation, it worked. And the entire continent of Australia and everyone descended from those first arrivals exists today because of that single, impossibly brave decision. Would you have gotten on that raft knowing there was no guarantee anything was out there at all? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to know. And subscribe, because next time we're asking why dogs tilt their heads when you talk to them. See you then.